bon après-midi, good afternoon. We have with us today Harold Treskenof, right? Who is a writer, but he does many more things. So we're going to find out together about his involvement in the war, I would say, right, in Japan?
Post-VJ Day.
Post-VJ Day, you say? Okay, and but after talking to him, I found out that he does a lot of things that nobody knows about. So Harold, it's a pleasure to have you with us today. And I wanted to find out more than you want to disclose, but we'll disclose whatever you want to disclose. But tell me, what subject did you pick today to talk about?
Thank you, Aline. Talk about the role of the United States and Great Britain in French-Vietnam relations between the two world wars and in the immediate post-VJ Day period.
Okay, you told me also that you do speak French, right?
Je parle français seulement un peu, mais j'aime la langue française.
D'accord. Donc, mais vous préférez faire l'interview en anglais, c'est ça?
S'il vous plaît, oui.
Ok. Bon, alors, if you like, I will then ask you the question in English. So tell me, when you were in the war, were you part of a regular army? And
well, I was in the army,
right.
Yes, a soldier in the United States Army.
Yeah. And how did you get involved to do more than that? I mean, more than what the regular soldier does?
Well, I always have had an inquiring mind.
Okay.
And it so happens that amongst my various duties was being a newspaper editor in the Army.
Okay. So you were a writer, kind of, and for all the soldier, you had like a newsletter or something?
Something like that.
Something like that, okay. So when you were in Japan, you found out a lot of things that nobody knows about. So those are the things I want you to talk about. So
well, it had nothing to do, it had more to do with my own inquiring mind, which started at the age of 12 when I was editor of my junior high school newspaper.
Okay. So what did you do? What was your role in all these things?
Thank you. Well, I learned a lot about what was happening in Vietnam during World War II, especially the relations between the Provisional Committee of the Democratic Republic of Vietnam, which was the coalition anti-Japanese and anti-Vichy underground of the...
What's anti-Vichy? What's that?
Well, during World War II,
right.
Technically, Vietnam was administered by Vichy France, by the Pétain people.
Oh, really? Okay.
But actually, the Japanese called the shots, so to speak, because they had invaded Vietnam a year or so prior to Pearl Harbor. And so Vietnam was technically a French colony, but in reality it was run by Japan. So the two groups.
You mean we hear mostly about the French? I never heard a lot too much about the Japanese being involved in Vietnam before. I mean, all I heard about mostly is the French. Maybe because I was raised in France, but that's all I heard about myself.
Oh.
Maybe in Japan they learned something else in school, but...
As a matter of fact, the very first day that I was in Japan, that is, after having reached our camp in Japan, I was using one of the bath facilities there, and I noticed on the floor a Japanese-French dictionary published by the Japanese Army.
I see, because they were both in Vietnam.
That was my assumption, and I'm sure it was a correct one.
I rarely meet a Japanese person that speaks French, though. I mean, I meet a lot of Vietnamese who speak French, though. I mean, it's...
Well, may I tell you how I first met a Vietnamese student in Japan?
Okay.
I was walking down the Ginza, which is the main street in Tokyo.
Okay.
and I thought that I'd conduct a little experiment,
Like,
walking down the sidewalk, looking each person in the eye as that person approached me on the opposite side of the sidewalk. And I would concurrently hum, sing, and whistle the Marseillaise
wow,
and see what kind of a reaction I would get.
I see.
Well, I was almost to the middle of the block, and most of the people in kimonos at that time,
Ignored it.
they didn't know, they ignored it, they didn't know what was happening.
And they thought maybe it's just somebody singing something weird.
Yes.
Okay.
But then along came a person whom I assumed was a Japanese person, a young fellow,
Yeah.
in nondescript Western clothes, an odd jacket, an odd pair of trousers, and he stopped.
Yeah.
And he rattled off Parisian French, perfect Parisian French to me. And I didn't know Vietnamese or Japanese, but I could converse in French with him.
Ah,
And so he told me a good many things.
I see. But were these things that you would later on put in the newspaper, or they were your personal knowledge that you were very careful not to disclose?
Well, as a matter of fact,
Yeah.
this student had kept up a clandestine correspondence with his friends in Vietnam proper while he was in Japan. Then, after the war, after I came back,
When you say clandestine correspondence, then you wouldn't go to the regular airmail channels?
what I meant was a private correspondence of sorts. He knew what was happening
Yeah.
inside the anti-Japanese and the anti-Vichy French guerrilla movement. He knew that American OSS troops, which means Army, Navy, Marines, as part of the Office of Strategic Services troops in Vietnam, while it was occupied by Japan, were cooperating with the anti-Japanese Vietnam underground. And he told me of the relationship between the two from time to time.
I see. But who were you? I mean, you were an American, right? I mean, you are from you are a Russian, but you were basically an American.
Well, my parents came from Russia when they were teenagers.
Oh, okay.
But I'm native born, yeah.
Okay. Now, with these people, when they told you things, did they know that you could possibly relate what they would tell you?
Well, all they knew was that we both spoke French and we had a conversation, and it was entirely informal.
Okay, so it was not very important information then?
To me it was.
To you, okay. What kind of information?
Well, specifically that, for example,
Yeah.
that the Vietnamese guerrillas who fought as allies with the American OSS troops, starting in 1944 about. Prior to 1944, in the Office of Strategic Services in Washington, D.C., a Indochina desk had been established. In 1944, actually American troops entered Vietnam as allies, fought with the Vietnam underground against Japan and against the Vichy French.
Wow. Okay.
Now, he told me, for example, this Vietnam student, that the Vietnam guerrillas had been told that they were not only fighting against Japan and against the Vichy French, but they were fighting for their own independence as a nation from France.
Okay, so then not only they wanted to be independent from Japan, but also from France. They wanted to be totally independent.
Yes.
Which they achieved anyway now.
But the thing is
Yeah.
that at what price? What had happened was this,
Yeah.
and they were so told. President Roosevelt had disagreed with General de Gaulle and with Winston Churchill. President Roosevelt believed that Vietnam should be independent from France after World War II. But de Gaulle, of course not, and neither Churchill.
Well, so they both wanted to colonize that country.
Churchill wanted to keep the British
Right.
colonies,
And
de Gaulle wanted to keep the French colonies.
And finally, none of them did. I mean, the Americans wanted what the Americans have to do there? Liberate Vietnam?
What the Americans did was, by order of the Commander-in-Chief, President Roosevelt, and General William Donovan, who was head of the Office of Strategy, was to help defeat the Japanese in World War II. And their role in Vietnam was toward that end. And toward that end, they fought as allies with the Provisional Committee of the Democratic Republic of Vietnam, which was a coalition group. The Emperor Bao Dai on the right, all the way to the extreme left, Ho Chi Minh, and all the entire political spectrum
So
in between.
in other words, the Americans were with the Vietnamese at one point.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
As allies.
And at what point did the Americans go against the Vietnamese?
When on August 15th,
Right.
Emperor Hirohito accepted the American surrender terms. Then Ho Chi Minh, as head of the coalition Vietnam Underground, sent a message to President Truman,
And told him what?
which said, in effect, President Roosevelt has promised us independence from France on VJ Day. We ask you now to keep President Roosevelt's promise and recognize us as an independent nation, as simple as that.
Okay.
And President Truman never replied.
I see. So all of a sudden, the Americans were against the Vietnamese with the French. Is that it?
Well, what happened was, we're a little bit ahead of the game,
Well, okay.
in that what happened, and I think is especially interesting, August 15th, Hirohito accepted surrender. A day or so later, Ho Chi Minh wrote to President Truman, and on August 17th, General de Gaulle appointed Thierry d'Argenlieu as the Governor General of Vietnam,
Oh, wow.
and appointed Jacques Leclerc
No.
as the commander of the military forces there. And Maurice Schumann in Washington had got word that President Truman, Maurice Schumann was the French ambassador in Washington,
Okay.
he had got word that President Truman was ignoring the request of Ho Chi Minh.
I see.
He contacted de Gaulle
And told him.
and told him that. Then on the 17th of August is when de Gaulle appointed Thierry d'Argenlieu as Governor General of Indochina.
So there was a big conflict there.
And then General de Gaulle contacted Clement Attlee in Great Britain. Attlee had won an election against Winston Churchill and was now the Prime Minister of Great Britain. And de Gaulle asked Attlee, please get Louis Mountbatten in Singapore to drop British paratroopers over Vietnam and hold on to the country until I can get my French troops back in there to take charge.
So yeah, they wanted to totally have control of Vietnam, right? The French.
Right, and Mountbatten did that. Big cargo planes with British paratroopers dropped over Saigon and held it until a convoy, which de Gaulle had ordered to leave Le Havre,
I see.
of empty French merchant ships. They were carrying no cargo.
Nothing. I see.
And they were convoyed by French Navy ships. And they were on their way ultimately to Vietnam
Right.
because Mountbatten was holding on to Vietnam for them.
But nobody knew they were empty, right?
Not at the time. Do you know why they were? They stopped right here in San Francisco
I see.
at Fort Mason
Oh.
and filled up.
Refueled. Okay.
More than refilled, filled up with arms.
Wow.
The
Okay.
ships were empty. And so then they went to
went-
Vietnam,
okay.
and in a ceremony, Mountbatten turned over Vietnam back to France
Wow.
in downtown Saigon.
I see. Now, at that point, Vietnam was occupied by the French, and
Well, it had been still occupied by the French before that,
Right,
but by
but
the
they-
Vichy French.
okay,
But now it was
Officially.
occupied by the Free French.
okay, okay. So now, at that point, Vietnam is occupied by the French. At what point now the American wants it?
Now, Ho Chi Minh still stated that the Americans were his best allies.
Okay.
And he said, I'm going to try and keep on convincing the Americans that they should recognize us as an independent nation.
So he was counting on the American to get rid of the French, right?
To
certain extent.
at the very least, in his correspondence with Truman,
Okay.
at the very least, to come out in favor of Vietnam independence, and perhaps declare a trusteeship by the United Nations or a trusteeship by the United States
Okay.
until the details of Vietnam independence could be worked out.
All right.
Now, what happened then was there was no free world press in Vietnam at this time.
Okay.
No reporter from Free French newspapers, no reporter from British newspapers, American newspapers. All this was going on without press coverage. What I've mentioned to you till now.
Right. So all the correspondence between those two, the president and the emperor, nobody knew about it.
Not at that time,
Okay.
right. What happened was that there were 3 correspondents in China right over the border with North Vietnam. Now, one of them was Greta Palmer of Reader's Digest. The other was P.E.M. Chopra of All India Radio. And the third was Count Serge de Gainsbourg,
Okay, I know him. Okay.
who was the foreign editor, who at that time was a reporter, a correspondent in Japan and China for Agence France Presse.
Okay.
Now, they couldn't get in through regular channels. They had heard a rumor about what was going on, but this was around October, November now. They hitchhiked a ride on an American plane
All right.
to get into Vietnam. And they landed there and they wrote dispatch after dispatch, most of which never appeared in any newspaper,
Wow.
completely censored.
Okay. So, in the beginning, when the Americans got involved with Vietnam, did they go against the French or against who they go against first?
How do you mean in the beginning?
I mean,
and at what point do we speak?
What I'm saying is when the Americans got in war with Vietnam, at what point was that?
Oh, as allies, you mean with Vietnam? When did they become? When did we send our troops? In 1944.
Against the French.
Against the Vichy French.
Right. Now, once you got rid of the French, you wanted to go against the Vietnamese, is that correct?
And against the Japanese, against the Vichy French, against the Japanese. Well, what they did was they did not confirm Roosevelt's wish to recognize Vietnam as an independent nation. Yes, and then
Vietnam decided to go to war
yes,
against you. I mean, against the Americans.
Yes. Yeah.
If that's how the conflict got, because you didn't
That's
keep
how
your
it started,
promise,
yes.
Because you didn't keep your promise, then we're against you also.
Yes, yes.
Did at one point did the French and the Americans get together? No.
Oh yes, I mean they got together. No, indeed, because Secretary of State Burns was at Potsdam. Then Secretary of State Marshall was more concerned with Europe. But then Dean Acheson became President Truman's third Secretary of State.
Okay.
And Dean Acheson came out against the Vietnam underground and against our former allies in Vietnam
Wow.
in very outspoken terms.
Wow.
So it was
your
Dean
best friend
Acheson.
became your best enemy?
Yeah, in effect, yes.
And that took place when?
Well, that was during, prior to President Truman's election. He took President Roosevelt's place automatically as vice president. So it was approximately 1947, 48.
Okay, and then at what point the French finally left and left only the Americans there?
After Dien Bien Phu,
Which was
after Jean de Lettres de Tassigny lost at Dien Bien Phu, Jacques Leclerc lost. That was in the 50s.
when? Right, so we left, but you were still there.
Oh, we picked up the ball,
Right, exactly.
like in a relay race.
Right, so we gave up on it, but you wanted it now, right? I mean, in other words.
And the thing is that nobody listened to the OSS people, to Colonel Archimedes Patty, P-A-T-T-I, who was in command of our OSS troops fighting with the Vietnam underground. Nobody listened to him. Nobody listened to General Donovan. As a matter of fact, President Truman said, oh, this OSS is no good. We've got to cancel it out. And so he closed the OSS down.
I see.
President Truman did. And he created a new type of intelligence agency called the CIA.
I see. And okay, now that we talked about all this history, why don't you tell me a little bit about you? I mean, what did you do in all that?
What did I do about it?
Yeah, you told me you did a lot of things.
First, may I tell you what Greta Palmer did? Remember one of those correspondents? I'll tell you very quickly.
Okay.
She came back to Washington, and she went to the State Department. She went to the Carlton Bar, where most of the State Department bureaucracy lived. And she tried to lobby the State Department to tell them about what had gone on in Vietnam, and the world didn't know about the censorship of the press trying to get the story out.
Okay.
Oh, she finally committed suicide. Greta Palmer did.
Wow.
Because she was so frustrated. Okay, now what I did afterward, in California Democratic politics, I would try and bring this up, and people like Alan Cranston and the California Democratic Council and Philip Burton,
Yeah.
when I'd get up and talk about this, they wouldn't know what I was talking about, supposedly. And they laughed me down. Oh, no. Actually, Senator Cranston was a member of the OSS
Wow.
at the time.
Oh.
Senator Alan Cranston of California was in the OSS when this OSS activity was going on in Vietnam. So he knew about it, and I had urged him to talk about it, but he never would.
So anyway, when